Exodus from east as Russians shift focus of attacks. It's remarkable. I looked at the map last night, and they're gone.
Yeah.
Like, they are gone from the Kyiv area, north of Kyiv. They're back in Belarus. They're back. I mean, they're completely out of there. And I know we're seeing so much coming at us every day. There's so many sides of the story every day. But just think how historical that was. Putin wanted to get the so-called Nazi out of the Jewish Nazi out of Kyiv, wanted to put his own puppet government in there, and expected to be able to do it in 2 or 3 days. They are now back in retreat in Belarus and Russia, out of there.
Remember, it was just 2 months ago, conventional wisdom was that if Putin decided to do this, he could roll in there with his vastly outmanned army against the Ukrainians, take Kyiv, install a puppet, get rid of Zelensky, all those things that were expected to happen.
By now,
in fact,
for sure.
The opposite has happened. And it's not just, of course, the weakness and incompetence of the Russian military. It's the extraordinary courage and bravery and competence of the Ukrainian military, Ukrainian civilians with the backing of the West, who have turned the tide. Now, they're rolling back, and as they do that, they are resorting to these hideous tactics, which is these are acts of desperation. So it's not a great story to tell, but it is a story about the Russian military being pushed out of a country they thought they were going to roll through a couple of months ago.
And Jonathan Weir, the White House, of course, understands this is all very fluid, but as the Russians escape from a failed offensive in Kyiv and going back to lick their wounds, it's not like things are static on the battlefield. If the Ukrainians are not having to defend the capital, that means there are going to be more Ukrainians going down, trying to break up that land bridge that connects Russia with Crimea.
Yeah, though there will be more Russians in the east, there will also be more Ukrainians in the east, more members of the Ukrainian military. Certainly the White House feels heartened with where they are. To Willie's point, I mean, the fierce resistance by the Ukrainian military surprised so many. I mean, there were some of the top minds within the Biden administration who also thought that the Putin war machine would roll through Ukraine in a matter of days. And there was real worry that he wouldn't stop there, that he would move on to other ex-Soviet nations next. That, of course, now a worry far reduced, as the Russian military has been shown to be a fraudulent, nowhere near what people thought it would be. The equipment is not as good, the men not as well trained, certainly not as nearly as competent as they hoped. But they recognize, though, this still war is far from over, and they do fear, as we've been reporting this week, this will now move into a long quagmire, a slog in the east, and which is why there's such urgency to get more equipment to the Ukrainians. As their defense minister yesterday said, when asked what he needed, he said weapons, weapons, weapons.
And Caddy K, the propaganda really is having an impact inside of Russia. It is just chilling to read one story after another, how the Russians completely buy the lies about the Nazification of Ukraine. They buy the lies that Vladimir Putin is feeding them, and he's been feeding them for years.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really trust Russian opinion polls very much because the cost of saying anything that's anti-Kremlin is pretty high in Moscow these days. But he does, approval of both President Putin and of the war in Ukraine appears to be growing. There are suggestions that it's in its 80s. Some 83% of Russians approve of the war, and it's because of what they're reading and listening to. And Russia still has a mass media in a sense that many countries, including this one, don't. And people really do watch one television program in the evening. That's what people outside of Moscow, and particularly, will get their news from. And the common line on those state broadcast television channels and talk shows in the evening is that this is all the Ukrainians' fault. I mean, it's just staggering. It's black and white, Joe. What we have seen from Bucha, they are blaming on Ukrainians backed by British intelligence. They're saying it's the British intelligence that's particularly good at this kind of thing. And look how awful it is that what the Ukrainians are doing to their own people. I don't know if you remember, there was that video, that awful video of Mariupol, a drone shot of Mariupol that came out last week. That ran that evening on Russian television. So it's not that they're not showing this. They're showing the same images that we are seeing in the West, but they're showing them saying, this is what the Ukrainian Nazis are doing to their own people. They're bombing their own cities. They're killing their own people. In some cases, they're saying they're actors. And if that's the only news you get, and they're only actually getting a few minutes of it, it's not just what they're hearing, it's that they're getting very little news about this. It's being treated as something normal, as not a big deal. They're getting a few minutes of it every evening, and if you get that night after night, you start to believe it.
Hey, thanks so much for watching our YouTube channel. You can follow up on today's top stories and breaking news, or catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.